وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير خلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. You're watching The Right Path. I'm your host Huda Shah. Lying is a very common practice in our society, and usually it has unimaginable consequences. In the spur of a moment, we lie to our companions, we lie to the people we care most about, and that destroys our relationship. But what happens in our mental health is also destroyed in the process, because when you're lying, your brain is sending contradictory signals to your body, and that in turn causes high blood pressures, causes twitching, causing sweating, and all of these things. And it kind of tells you that this is something wrong and you shouldn't be doing it, because your body is not in connection or not in cognizance with the statement that you're passing, which is a lie. We'll be talking in depth about the significance of not lying and telling the truth, and how to curtail this evil from our society, in conversation with Dr. Kanwal Kaisar. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sahiba, how are you?
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah.
Dr. Sahiba, lying is known as the disease of the heart. That, I think, is pretty self-explanatory, as it is a huge burden on oneself as well when you're lying. Yeah. So can you a little bit elaborate on that?
Yes, this is a disease of the heart, because this is about integrity, like how you are inside, because that's going to be a reflection in the outside. And basically, when you're lying, you are deceiving. There is no coordination between your thought process and your action. You're changing facts. Sometimes it's just baseless stuff that you are hanging out with. So definitely it's your heart that is affected badly by lying.
And usually when, I think if we talk about the current scenario, usually when we are saying, okay, it's a white lie, we're just saying it to please the other person, and it's not going to affect them in any way. And oftentimes when we're making a CV for ourselves in order to go for work, we often tend to exaggerate our own skills in that CV. So do you think that comes under the ambit of lying?
White lie, blue lie, green lie. Any shade of lie, it's a lie. That is why we have to be very particular about, because we find out that one of the narration in which the Prophet ﷺ saw this lady who was calling her kid and talking to the kid and saying, I have to give you so and so. And then he asked her, did you actually plan to give it to your kid? And she said, yes, I was. So he said, good, else it would have been written as a lie for you. So the thing is that even if you feel that it is something really naive and doesn't make any difference, so I was just kidding, I was just joking, no, we cannot do that, because no matter what you say, it affects your integrity, and it also affects your relationships. But it is so ironic in our times that people lie. I was just reading some of the facts, and they say there are 12% of adults who admit that they often lie. Then there are 31% of the people who admit that they lie on their resume.
Yes.
There are 13% of the patients who lie to their doctors. There are 30% patients who say we lie to our doctors about the diet we are taking and how much exercise we are engaged in. 60% of the people, within the 10 minutes of their conversation, they lie once.
60%?
60%.
Oh, that's a huge number.
Yeah.
That's more than the general amount of people there are, like over the average. So over the average, people are lying.
Because we are so casual about it. We are not probably even actually thinking that I'm lying. It's like, it doesn't make any difference whatever I say in front of the other person.
So white lie in itself is wrong.
Yes, it is.
There's no justification for it. Even on the resumes, you have to be very honest.
Yes.
And so if we expand on that, when we see marketing, when we see advertisements and people working in such domains, because I think it is very important to realize this, like we've had this conversation, you said things are becoming complicated, because I believe that if somebody is not looking good and you say to their faces that, oh, it's okay, you look good, or maybe, you know, because at that moment there's nothing they can do about it, but it's a lie, right? And if we come back to the marketing angle or the advertising angle, some of my friends who are working in this domain, they often tend to complain about the amount of lying that goes into it. So in light of all this, in light of the practical life, if we look into it and if we want to take our religion with it, what is the common ground that needs to be met?
We need to be honest with ourselves that whatever we are promoting, it could be our product, it could be our talents, it could be anything which is part of us. So we need to be honest with ourselves first of all, because when you lie, it is definitely affecting your integrity, and obviously your image goes down in front of other people as well.
Yes.
And ultimately you suffer because you don't feel good about yourself. Your self-esteem is badly affected, and that is why it is important to see that our feelings, we are not channelizing them properly. Our actions, we are going in a very different zone. Then even our knowledge, what we are talking about, is affected. So I would advise to all the people who are working in industry in any place, I would say raise the bar for your product that you are promoting rather than lying about it, and try to provide the services to people which you're talking about, so that there is an element of trust between you and your customer, because that's when your product is going to grow. Because let's say you lie about something and your consumers, they would ultimately find out that this product is not worth it. So they would spread the word around, and they're not going to be around you.
That is very good advice, because now you are kind of working on bettering the product and not deceiving people at the same time, and it will eventually help you.
Yes.
Because if you're okay, you sell 100 products out of deception, the next 100 products won't sell themselves.
No, they won't.
It's about you. If the product and the integrity of your word is strong enough, then people will listen to you.
Like,
and
sometimes we go and we buy something, and we ask them that if I have to change a size or a color, they are so nice on your face, and they're like, ma'am, no issue at all.
Yes,
now you walk
exactly.
in after 2 days and they don't even acknowledge anything. So obviously you promise yourself, I'm not going to come back to this store anymore.
Exactly.
And sometimes when they are so nice to you, they exchange things, whatever they have told you, that if the tag is on, if the receipt is there, we will accept it. So they accept it, and that's when you go around and you also talk about them being honest in their dealing.
Exactly.
And that's where then you develop this loyalty with them.
Exactly, and customer loyalty, I think, goes a long way.
It does.
Now if we talk about the motive behind a lie, because we all know that it's lying, and our body is telling us that, okay, don't lie, because you're twitching, and like I mentioned in my introduction, that there are a lot of things that is happening when you're lying. You cannot even face the person and everything like that. So why do you think we as humans feel the need to lie?
It will depend upon the age and the situation as well. Like kids, when they lie, they initially they want to tell tall tales, and they live in their fantasy world, and that's why they're like, I'm flying, or I'm going here and there, and I did this, and I can make up this whole building. So that is their fantasy, because they're trying to imagine and they're trying to learn things. Then some people, they want to avoid being cornered for their mistakes or something that they don't want to be accountable for. Sometimes you have cheated on someone and now you're feeling bad about it, and
Yes.
you keep lying. Sometimes you have made a big mistake, and again you don't want to acknowledge it, because that has affected other people. And there are also times when other people also never give you any space, any room, that okay, it's okay if you have made a mistake. So when you feel cornered some way, when you feel that you'll be punished for that, when you feel that some people are not going to take into account even when you tell them honest opinion on something, so you end up lying. And because you want to avoid punishment, you want to also give a boost to your self-esteem, because sometimes it's also badly affected.
So maybe if you're sitting with strangers, you talk about the life that you want, and you lie about it, believing it's the truth at that moment. But again, you're not just deceiving God or the people, you're deceiving your own self as well.
Yes, you're deceiving yourself, and that creates more misery inside, more insecurities inside, more self-esteem goes down a lot because of this thing.
Right. And what is mentioned in Quran in relevance to liars and lying in a sort of way that is, because we know that overall we know that it is a bad thing, but if we talk about the Quran specifically.
In Quran we find out that a lot of talk goes around for the hypocrites, because this is one of the traits of the hypocrites,
Right.
that they lie. And like in Surah Tawbah, verse number 119, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu ittaqullah wa kunu ma'as sadiqeen. That, O believers, have taqwa of Allah, be Allah conscious, and be among the truthful people. So there is a connection. Like in Ramadan, we are working on our taqwa. So we are trying to be God conscious in this month. And similarly, what we need to do is practice being truthful. try to analyze all the situations over there. Then we also find out that there is a narration related to the hypocrites, where the Prophet ﷺ said that there are signs for the hypocrites, and there are 3 of them. When he speaks, he lies. Whenever he promises something, he breaks it. Whenever you trust him with something, he betrays. So imagine that these are the traits that have been talked about, highlighted, and when you lie, you are not only creating mischief for yourself, but you are taking so many responsibilities for granted,
Yes.
so many relationships for granted. Look at infidelity that happens, look at the divorce rate that goes up because of that. Also the relationships, they suffer so badly, and that's why a lot of time people don't trust each other. Because of our lies when we are going abroad, we are traveling, because of what we mention in our visa for ourselves. That is why people, they check us repeatedly, because they don't trust us. So that is why it is very, very important that we work on our lives.
We should indeed work on our lives. Now, in your earlier response, you mentioned that sometimes people lie out of fear. Sometimes they lie to protect themselves. So in such a scenario, what advice would you give to a believer? Because I think sometimes we're all humans and we do commit mistakes and sins. But what advice, what is the path that one should take while facing such a scenario?
These are the difficult scenarios, and that's when no matter how hard you try, you sometimes again feel that it's always safe to say something which is not actually the truth. Now, what we find out from the life of the Prophet ﷺ, he did say that to save a relationship or in a very difficult situation, you don't have to be very truthful. But doesn't mean that you have to start lying about it. For example, if somebody is standing in front of you, she's wearing a dress and the color is not looking good on her, and she asks you in a very enthusiastic tone, how do I look? So if you say you look horrible, and that's the truth, that's the ground reality, she would hate you for for the whole life. So what you can maybe say is, oh, it's looking nice, but the other one that you wore that day was more nicer on you, or looked better on you. So similarly, in a relationship, we can postpone talking about it. We can say, I'm not ready to talk about it, rather than lying about it. Let's say you were engaged in some activity which is not appropriate and you don't want to tell someone. You can say, I was hanging out with someone. You don't have to give any further details onto that, but don't lie. That's like the bottom line. Like sometimes when I have to go somewhere to deliver a talk or attend a certain session, and I'm sitting with some people where I know that they wouldn't appreciate why I'm doing all these activities. So when they ask me where you are going, I would just say for an important task. That's it. But I'm not lying that I'm going home and I need a nap and I'm sleeping. So you just say something which is in line with that, but maybe the other people is understanding it differently.
Right. But what if somebody is provoking you and kind of poking you into, asking questions, okay, so if you're going for an important task, can you tell us about it, or something like that?
You can just simply say in a nicer tone that I'm not comfortable talking about it. And I think it's not appropriate time to talk about it. Like you can learn some very smart statements or words that you can release in those times that I would, but when it's appropriate, then I would let you know what I'm engaged in.
That is, I think, very smart way to go about it, because you're not giving the entire information, but again, you're not lying. So, like you initially said, that black, white, blue, green, any lie is a lie.
Any rainbow color is a lie.
It will never be justified in any form.
No.
Right. Now, if we talk about the virtues of truthfulness, because I think it is also important to motivate people. Okay, so we're telling our viewers not to lie, but it is also important to show them, okay, so what benefits will the truth bring them? How will it strengthen their bonds with the family members and everything in that respect? So if you can laminate on that a bit.
There's a very beautiful narration in front of me where the Prophet ﷺ said, truthfulness leads to righteousness and righteousness leads to paradise, and a man keeps on telling the truth until he becomes a truthful person, and falsehood leads to evil and evil leads to fire, and a man keeps on telling lies until he is written with Allah as a liar. So it's like a dominoes effect that is created, whether you lie or you are truthful. So it's our choice then, what do we want to be hanging out with. Another important thing is sometimes when people say, okay, fine, I'm going to tell the truth, but then they are killing people with their truths. I hate you and you're a nasty person and get out of my office or get out of my room and get out of my life. Okay, yes, fine, I'm engaged in certain haram relationship, and how dare you ask me or question me like that. Sometimes there is a relationship barrier between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, and sometimes I've seen those saas bahu episodes where the mother-in-law would say, oh, I'm being honest, and that's why I tell my bahu she is horrible in cooking, she is horrible in taking care of her kids. No, we can't do that. We have to be honest, but in a dignified manner. Let's say you see someone doing something which is not appropriate, you can tell them, you can communicate to them in an honest manner, but in a gentle manner, something that they can digest. And it can come in different parts, like, you can tell them that I expect you to do a certain task in this manner, and I would appreciate if you'd be able to do it. So that is also important, how we talk to people in a way. Like sometimes a friend would ask you, do you think I have put on some weight? And she has. So how do you tell her? Well, yes, I know you have, but I know that you can work around
Reduce
it,
it
or you
as
can
well.
reduce it.
Yeah, there are certain ways. So absolute truthfulness is also something that we should avoid, because it would bring people down and demoralize people as well. So right choice of words is again the emphasis, and of course the right intention as well, and the act of truthfulness in itself is also very important. Now, if we move to the younger generation, in the social media age where people build up their whole lives on lies, and there are scams at every corner, and it makes you kind of very skeptical of everything that is going around you, and it kind of justifies lying in a sense as well. So in that scenario, how would the modern day parent guide their children in for following the path of truthfulness?
From the very beginning, first of all, we have to role model it. A lot of time, parents, they are lying and giving justifications for that, and then they're expecting their kids to be very honest. So it's not possible. If you're lying to your maid, you're lying to your spouse, you're lying to your family members, because kids have eyes and ears, and they see everything, they absorb everything that you're learning from. Secondly, you need to reward the truthful behavior. And thirdly, you need to give them some solutions when they lie. Like, when they lie, don't just start hitting them or shouting at them or getting angry with them, saying, Astaghfirullah, why did you lie? What you need to see is actually analyze the situation. Why did my kid lie? Because kids, what they'll do is, for example, you're out of home, you told them to sit back and study, complete their task. What do you think? What is the possibility they would do when the mom is gone for 2 hours? They won't be studying. It is like a very logical thing that we need to understand. They will be engaged in playing their games, their activities, and the moment they hear their mom coming, they'll be back to their books. So you should leave home remembering and realizing that they're just kids, and they would do that behavior. Now when you come back, don't corner them so that you actually force them or bring them in such a situation that they're so fearful of you, of the punishment and consequences, that they end up lying. So you just understand that it is pretty close to the thing that they would be doing their own thing when I was gone. So you just ask them how much you have studied and then move on from there, rather than like getting caught up in that situation. Secondly, thirdly, what you need to do is in different scenarios where they lie, do role playing with them.
Okay.
Like create a situation, Ahmed did this, and then he broke the glass, and he was scared of the mom getting angry or the dad getting upset about it, and he was actually thinking of lying. But then how did he go and express himself when he made a mistake? How did he communicate to his family?
You're giving them the solution.
Yes. Then whenever kids come to you talking about, Mom, I'm so sorry I lied to you. Dad, I'm so sorry I lied to you in that moment, and I was so afraid and I did not know how to handle the situation. Again, don't yell at them. Give them some solutions. Sit with them and try to analyze the situation and tell them that next time you come across a similar challenge, come to me. A lot of time youngsters also lie because we deny their honest feelings.
Yes.
Sometimes they would come to us and say, I'm going through a difficult time, and we're like, oh, Allah has blessed you with everything. you have so many blessings, and you're just in gratitude.
Yes.
And sometimes we don't give them permission for a certain thing, and because of that they start lying to us, and when they're hanging out with their friends, they're engaged in all those activities. Having said that, it doesn't mean that we let them do some
Have a
haram
free pass.
activities or not the right activities, but then explaining to them why certain thing is not allowed.
Right.
And why they need to show certain responsible behavior to be in a better position to ask their parents certain permissions. So there are a lot of things that we can teach our children about lying and being honest. And I would say for all relationships, one thing that we need to practice is radical honesty.
Right.
Like we are by large honest people.
It's the natural instinct.
Yes. And this includes our emotions. Like if I'm feeling negative about something, I need to be honest about it in a softer way, but yes, being honest about it. Similarly, about my past, if I am interacting with someone, living with someone, dealing with someone, and there is something in my past which is affecting this relationship. It's not like you start telling people
Everything.
dig all my past and here it is for you on the
Yeah.
platter. No, something which is affecting my relationship with you, I need to talk it out to you. Then similarly, in the current times, we need to be honest with especially our family members, even our boss, even our colleagues, even our siblings.
I think, but that is very hard. In a workplace, you can, because we have that culture of saying, yes, boss, and everything like that. Nobody can ever dare and stand up and say, okay, no, you are doing whatever you said is wrong. And because I think this is a cultural attribute now. This is the work culture that we're growing up in. So how would you advise someone to gather the courage to stand up to a boss?
If you work on your relationship and you have a good relationship and you respect the other person, and at the very same time you give them an honest feedback. Feedback when it is
People are
negative.
not receptive of, I think, honest feedback. Sometimes they just shun you. They're like, okay, I want someone to praise me, not someone who puts me
Yes,
down.
because a lot of people around would always be praising and
Exactly.
always be like, bashing about your personalities, and because they have their own invested interest. But what you have to do is be still honest in your relationship with your boss. And I have often seen that when I'm honest with people and I tell them how things are going, yes, sometimes they wouldn't engage me in certain activities, but they would respect me for being honest. Because we all like that. Like, if someone tells me honesty, I did something, I delivered a talk, or I examined my patient and didn't do a good job, obviously it will hurt me initially. It will
Yes.
pinch me. I wouldn't like it. But that will give me a food for thought that I need to improve on my skills or my work ethics. So it is important for all of us. It is good for our growth.
Exactly, and I think this is what people need to realize, that if somebody is having the courage to tell the truth to your face, because it's not easy, I would say this is the difficult conversation to
And
have.
sometimes what we can do is in these times we can email, we can send a
Yes.
voice note
Okay.
where we can actually
Avoid face-to-face
script something.
counter.
Yes, sometimes because we are afraid of a backlash on the face. So we can write a letter, we can send a nice, very honest opinion, but in a dignified manner, and give them time to process it. So that gives us space that other people are also able to understand. But let's say you're working in an environment and people don't respect your honest opinions. So then all you have to do is just stick to your own task rather than
Right.
getting engaged in everything in every activity.
Right, and that's okay.
That's okay.
Right.
You don't have to be there for everything and everyone. You just say, I'm going to honestly come, do my work, and leave.
And that's it. That is interesting, because I feel that we oftentimes have the burden to fix things as well. Okay, if we see something wrong that is happening, maybe in the government or maybe in the system as well, we have this desire to fix it, and then we ruin our own thing in the process as well. So if there's something that is not that you cannot change, maybe you can just take a step back, be honest in your own work, and focus on your own work.
Focus on your own work.
Right. And now if we talk about, because I think you specialize in this field, that when children are lying,
Yeah.
so how to identify, what are some of the things they give away when they're lying, because I think it's very important to understand this as well. And again, this question would extend to adults as well. What are some of the things that a lying person does?
Because there's not going to be integrity or alignment in the actions, in the speech, in the thought process. You would
Right.
be able to pick signals on your radar that there is something wrong that the person is talking about. And then what you can do is, the most important thing over here is you need to talk to that person. And I think that's the difficult part, because that's where we fail.
Yes.
And that lie either stays there or it gets larger than its size. And because we don't know how to handle those situations. I remember once a mother came to my office and she locked the door and she sat inside and she just started crying. I was like so scared for her, what actually happened to her. So when she was done, and after that she said to me that my kid lied to me. And the story was, she was not letting him hang out with a certain friend, and he actually wanted to be with that friend.
Right.
So he was lying to the mom and going out and meeting that friend. Then I told the mom that you have to understand the actual emotions of your son, and at the very same time sit with him, guide him, tell him the reasons why you are skeptic about the son, the friend's son. So the friend, and that's when, like, you are able to handle different situations.
Right.
So this is difficult because our society is so much into lying. We have taken
Yes.
it as a new norm.
Lying and cheating in itself, this is something that I want to highlight as well, that oftentimes during examinations we do not consider cheating as a bad thing. But it is a form of lying, because
It is.
you are not being honest in that exam, and you're taking someone else's efforts into your own thing, and then somebody who has actually worked hard, you're kind of belittling their hard work
Not
as
only
well.
that, Vida, like if I am I am not studying, I'm not putting in hard work, and ultimately I graduate.
Yes.
What are going to be my work ethics? How much command I have over the subject that I have studied and I've presented as my degree?
Yes.
So it's dishonesty with my own self as well, because I'm lying to myself that I know the job and I'm not good at knowing that job. So many times when we hire people and we just look at their resume and we're like, wow, but ultimately they don't prove their work.
Yes.
Why? Because even when they studied the subject, they had not been honest in their assignments and all the work and all the learning. And nowadays with the COVID, when all the students are on the Zoom thing and they are attending their classes and they're not actually doing any work.
Yes, and they're just lying. They're
They're just
just,
lying.
and I don't realize, because I don't understand why people don't realize this, that they're harming their own self. In the process, I think everything that is mentioned in the Quran and is being taught, was taught by the Prophet, peace be upon him, was for our own benefit. And I think the minute we realize this, we will be able to accept the teachings and apply it in a more efficient manner. So in light of that, can you tell us some of the stories of the Prophet, peace be upon him, where he was truthful in his actions, and that led to a lot of prosperity and a lot of success in his business?
We have, like, starting from before he had this prophethood, his trait was he was Sadiq and Amin. He was the truthful one. That is why people would leave their material things with him, so that he could safeguard them. And that is why he was trusted with the business transaction as well. And that is why we find out he got married to Khadija radhiyallahu anha because of his honesty. So even when he got his first revelation and he came down and he was shivering and he was like, he was in a very chaotic state, because this was the
Exactly.
first time he has encountered that scenario. So when he was talking to his wife and he said that the angel came to me and he gave me this revelation and he told me that I am the prophet, I'm the chosen one. So she said, why wouldn't you be chosen one?
Exactly.
And then all the traits that she talked about, one of them was you are an honest person. You take care of people around you. And why wouldn't people choose you? So this was like so encouraging how he would talk around to people. Then we find out when Abyssinia, the people, some migrated, the first migration was towards Abyssinia. And their Christian king, who was the Najash, what he did was that when he heard about the believers and the Muslims, and then he heard that they are there to take this asylum, and he called them in. So Jafar Zilanho, when he came to his court, he asked him, what are the qualities of your prophet? So again, they talked about, apart from other things, he's an honest one. He's talking about oneness of God. And he said, yes, this is exactly what is written in our divine scriptures as well, that a prophet like would come. And then he recited the verses from Surah Maryam. So he was crying at that moment, and he actually converted to Islam. So we find out that in all the places, people would recognize him being the prophet from one of the quality being that he was an honest person.
That is, I think, the major takeaway, because again, like you said, if you tell one lie, it's a dominoes effect.
Yes.
And it kind of ruins everything in the process. If in the beginning of a relationship you're lying about something, and maybe you're thinking it's not a big deal, but otherwise, you know, with time it will prove to be a big deal.
Yes.
And it will have consequences.
It will.
Right. And on that note, we'll conclude today's discussion. Thank you so much, Dr. Kanwal Kaisar, again for taking time out for us. So the major takeaway from today's transmission was to not lie. Be truthful in your actions, because that will instill a sense of integrity in you, and you will be respected throughout the world and throughout your community, throughout your society, through your family as well. So these are the small things that you can actually instill within your personality in order to become the best version of yourself. On this note, I'll bid you farewell. Take care. Allah Hafiz.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير خلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما